Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're coming in from. Welcome. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict, cultivate communication, and create empowered teams and with a fabulous culture with complex people. And I am so excited today because today's guest is really quite the delight. So every week I love to bring somebody on that's going to give you helpful tips in being a leader, in cultivating your communication, in creating that culture that makes people want to stay, that makes people loyal, but also really productive and enjoyable for everyone. And Matt Heller, friends. I was introduced to Matt earlier this summer, and he has become a new fan favorite of mine. He has grown up in the amusement park industry, and he's really an expert in helping first-time leaders and teams really work out some of those leadership things. He's an author, he's a podcaster, he is a lovely, newly known Enneagram 9. We have done some fun work together. And so I'm so excited for you to hear from him today in just a moment. If you are coming in live, let us know over in the comments. They might be over there, they might be down there. It depends on where you're watching, where you're coming in from, and maybe even what you're drinking today. So let's welcome Matt.
Well, hey there. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so glad that you're here today. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I am excited to be here.
Yes. So I always love to start out with a little bit of your story. Tell us a little bit for the people who are hanging out with us today, Christina, Lisa, who are you and how did you get here owning your own business and author and podcaster and all the things?
Well, it certainly wasn't what I started out thinking I would do, that's for sure. The short version is I started my career in the attractions industry at 18 years old as a ride operator. My mom said, "Hey, the park down the road is hiring. You should go there." And kind of, reluctantly, as you do when your mom tells you to do something, I said, "Okay, I'll do that." Well, 30 something years later, here I am still in and supporting the attractions industry. I've spent many years in operations and human resources at many different facilities around the country. In 2011, I decided it was time to step away and step out on my own. So that's when I created my company, Performance Optimist Consulting. And now what I get to do is, my tagline is helping leaders lead. Sometimes people are in a leadership role and they don't know how to lead. So that's what I get to do. And like I said, I've been doing this on my own since 2011. And also you mentioned I've written a couple of books and I also have a podcast. So here I am.
Yeah, I'm really excited for your breadth of expertise and just the way you talk about leaders and the simplicity of helping leaders lead. I think at least when I'm talking to clients or potential speaking clients or consulting clients, one of the big problems that comes up is they say things like, we've got these new leaders and they were a fantastic graphic designer, or they were an amazing account service person, or they were the best coder, and they get promoted into leadership and it's their first time. And then we don't know what to do. And every time I'm talking to somebody, they're like, I'm sure it's just us. And I'm like, it is not just you, I promise. So what are some of those things that you see first-time leaders do? And what do you think a first-time leader really is?
So there's a lot packed into that. So
I know I asked 82 questions. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to tell anyone who thinks that they are on their own or it's unique to them, that they have a great individual contributor that may struggle as a first-time leader, you're not alone.
Not alone.
In fact, when I first was experiencing this, in the theme park world, my dad, who was in manufacturing for a long time, he said, we've done the same thing. He's like, we take the person that's strongest, on the line and, working the line, and we put them in a leadership position and they just crash and burn. And part of the reason for that is because a lot of times when you are an individual contributor, you are leading yourself, but you're also being led. And when you get into that leadership role, now your mindset has to change because you're no longer just responsible for you. You're now responsible for the people that are in roles that you used to have. So when I talk about leadership mindset, it really has everything to do about how you approach every situation. So again, you're not just the one getting those things done. You're now responsible for getting those things done, but through other people. And that's one of the big things that people don't necessarily recognize when they moved into that first leadership role.
I think that's a really great framework to think about. That's so simple. You're still responsible for getting these things done, but now it's not your hands or just your brain. It's through other people. And that through is a different skill. Like you're used to being able just to do it yourself, or like you said, you're maybe a subject matter expert or that individual contributor. And now suddenly it's not just your skill set that you're responsible for. And it's such a
Right.
simple framework for that. I know when I was an educator, that was my first career. And I started as a faculty leader. I was still a teacher, but was doing some faculty leadership work. And, I could run a classroom. I happened to be the music teacher. So I had 400 students and I could put every single one of them up on stage at the same time and lead them. But leading adults was a different situation. And I think we find that too. Sometimes first-time leaders are also now leading their peers. What kind of struggle does that create?
How much time do you have?
Okay, I'm supposed to be 20 minutes. This
Right?
is hard for me. Don't ask me this question.
It creates incredible struggles, and I've seen it addressed in a number of different ways. First of all, depending on the organization, depending on what it is that you're leading and what department you might be in, maybe you're switching departments. So you're not, as you get promoted, so you're not leading those people that you used to work directly with. So that could be one way to kind of alleviate that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that people don't realize is that they've changed. They may not realize in their mind that they've changed, but to other people, they are now they. They're no longer us, right? So to the peer group, now you've got a bunch of people who are looking at you differently, even though you don't feel different.
Yeah, you're like, it's just me. I'm the same.
It's just me, of course. I haven't changed. Yes, you have, in their mind, in their eyes.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I really try to get people to understand is that it's important to have a very candid conversation with your team. Usually one-on-one is best.
Okay.
To really outline the expectations. For example, if you and I worked together for a number of years and then you got promoted, I would want you to have a conversation with me about your expectations. I would want you to say, Matt, we've known each other for a long time. We're friends. Here are the things that I expect now from you in your role as someone that I'm leading, but I also want to hear your expectations of me. So having a good two-way conversation. And what I think that does is it sets the stage for later on. So part of it, yes, it's about that conversation, but it's also about what's going to happen when you have to discipline me, or you're recognizing me, or you're recognizing another peer, even though, hey, Jen, we're friends. What happened, right? Well, somebody else did a little bit better. And I told you when we first sat down, I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm going to be frank with you about your performance. And that's going to be an expectation. Mm-hmm. I also think it's a great opportunity for us to ask for that person's help. So often, we get into that leadership role and we assume that our friends are going to be our greatest asset, but sometimes not, because maybe they went for that position and they didn't get it. So maybe now they're hurt, or they perceive some difference in the way that you're behaving. And now that affects the way that they interpret your discussions and your conversations. So I think a lot of that can be taken care of if you have that very frank, open conversation at the very beginning of when that relationship changes.
There are so many good things about what you just said. And before I underline and highlight a couple of them, I'm curious if you're listening live, if you've ever had this experience, or if you have a question about that, feel free to put those in the comments. So I think there are a few big things that you said that are incredibly valuable for everyone. And that, first of all, that it's a two-way conversation. You're not just sitting down and laying down the law and here's what it's going to be like now. Or even if you're super friendly about it and you think you have to be responsible to carry every bit of that, you don't. You really want to open that two-way conversation, which really leads into that other thing that you said was asking for help. So when you're having a two-way conversation, you're asking for them to support you, but you're also asking, what can I do to help you? Like that mutual support back and forth is so valuable to set that up. And the last thing is about expectations. So I always love to quote Brene Brown that clear is kind, that when we are clear, it is a kindness to others, and that expectations are the things that start getting our emotions riled up. We start getting like, this is what I think is going to happen. And if that doesn't happen, then it's not. And that's why the clear expectations are so, so important. And when I'm working with clients, one of the things I'm always talking about, expectations are spoken, like we say it out loud. Mm-hmm. They are agreed upon. Like, I'm not just telling you, this is their expectation. We agree. Yes, that's an expectation. And 3, they're reasonable and resourced. Like, we have this ability and we have the resources to do it. It's not something that's outside of what is possible. And that's such an important part of clarity. I'm so glad that you help that mindset with that way. It's just such a good thing. And I just want to comment on you a second as a newly Enneagram 9 leader. Enneagram is a personality framework that I use, and Matt and I have done a few things together. And that's kind of your superpower as a 9, bringing people together, seeing other points of view, asking for help. And I think you've just done that so well in your work. So Carly is saying establish expectations and what they can expect. Just Carly is agreeing, and finding that line is hard, Christina. I totally agree. It's such a challenge. I kind of want to switch from when you're the new leader to what happens when you've just promoted that new person. You've taken that new, you're like, we have this confidence, they're going to do well, we want to train them up. But what are some of the misconceptions that you find in your work that, we promoted this new person, and what like what happens then?
Well, I actually want to back up just a little bit, because I think there's an opportunity to put that person kind of through their paces before you put them into the leadership role to see if they're going to be successful, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's adding responsibility or letting them take charge of a project or those kind of things, that you can actually see how they're going to handle those pressure situations, and then be able to debrief and say, this is what went well, this is what didn't go so well. And then when it is time to promote someone, you're probably more sure that this person is ready or not for that particular role. So now that you've got them in the role, I think one of the big misconceptions is how long it takes for that person to develop their mindset.
Yes.
Right?
Tell us more.
It can take a long time. I mean, and it's going to vary based on the person. But I think if we just promote someone and give them a new office, or in my case, in the theme park world, we hand them a set of keys and a radio and say, go, you're now a leader, right? We're really doing them a disservice. I think the development of a leader needs to start before they're in that role, first of all. And then once they're in the role, the continued development, continued one-on-ones, maybe assigning them a mentor. But again, to me, this is about changing a thought process. You're not teaching someone how to do new tasks. Maybe in some cases you are, but for the most part, you're really focused on, how do I get this person to think differently? Mm-hmm. And that takes time. So, I use a picture in my presentations often of the old Kodak booth that you used to see in the parking lot of a supermarket or something, where you'd go drop off your film, and right on top it says 2-day photo finishing. And we think now, because with our phones, we can instantaneously see that selfie and know if our head is cut off, so we need to retake that picture. But back in the day, to quote unquote develop a photo, it took time. Our brains have
2 days was fast.
I know, right?
I can remember mailing. This is how old I am and cheap. I would mail my cartridge, and it would come back like 3 weeks later.
Yeah. So technology has developed to that speed, but our brains have not.
Absolutely.
So we really have to take time, give people the opportunity to make some mistakes, learn from those, figure out the best way forward for them. There is no one size fits all. I don't care if you're an organization that's really strict about certain things. That individual person, that human being, is probably going to be doing things a little differently than someone else. Mm-hmm. So give them that opportunity, give them that room to grow into it. And again, just take the time. It's going to take time.
It's such a good expectation to set, like this misconception that it's, even if you put them through their paces first, and Carly is saying trial by fire is not the way to prepare them. Even if
Agreed.
you do all of those things well, it's still going to take time. And that, I think, the pointing out that individual is so important. Even if they've gone through your very exact curriculum of training leaders, it's still that particular human's interpretation of it. And the time, I think we just want things so instant, so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things when I have coached leaders inside organizations and saying things like, when you find yourself saying, why can't they just, or they should just, like, that's an indicator that you need to just pause and really look at, well, just take it from a different perspective, because that time is so important.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I think real quick to that point, when you say, why can't they just, I've said that so many times, or I've, thought that, what have I done to create success for them?
Yeah.
Right? Have I, as a leader of leaders, have I, again, put them through their paces? Have I given them the opportunity to learn or grow? Or am I expecting them to know what I know? That's another big problem, is that, experienced leaders, once they see that somebody else has the title of leader, think that they know everything that right? And that is so not true.
The curse of knowledge. Like, it's just, you just don't know what you don't know sometimes if you're the new leader, and the experienced leader is like, why don't you know this? It's like we both struggle with that. And that question of why can't they just, I think your reframe of what have I done to help them. And when I am helping leaders, I often say, yes, you can ask that question, why can't they just, in a couple different ways, with an attitude and be like, get it together, or what are the reasons they can't? What supports or skills do I need to support them in? Like, what's blocking them? What's getting in their way? If you ask it that way, that's a powerful leadership question. Mm-hmm. And if you're the new person, kind of going back to that being the first time leader, do you find that people get down on themselves and they're like, why can't I just? So how do you help them in that way? Like, I'm now the leader. Why can't I just?
Sometimes they do. They do. But I think they also ask, how can I? Mm-hmm. It's that how can I, or how do I do this? How do I keep my team, performing at a high level? How do I set boundaries so that I'm not, completely burned out? How do I do these things? And I think it's about taking those things one by one. And, you mentioned curriculum, which as a trainer, I'm a huge fan of, obviously.
Former educator. I get it.
Exactly. However, I will say, and I think you'll probably back me up on this, that sometimes you can make the biggest impact with the smallest audience. When I'm working one-on-one with somebody, I know that I can go deep with that person, right? I can find out truly what's going on. Whereas if I do a session on delegation, let's say, maybe half the people really get it and they understand it, and the other half, they may not ask the question, or they may think they get it, but then when they go to apply it, they don't apply it quite correctly. So when you can work with people one-on-one, I found that is incredibly rewarding, because you can really find out what are those things that's really getting in that person's way, and how do we remove those roadblocks?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the powers when I am when I'm talking with a new client, I talk about the difference between consulting and coaching, because I come in as a trainer and a speaker, and I help them see this personality aspects, how that impacts the leader and the team. And consulting is helping them figure out what type of training and skills do they need to help their people grow. But coaching is actually helping those people apply it. Mm-hmm. And those are two different skill sets. And so sometimes, people can bring in like us from the outside to help them one-on-one. And sometimes it has to be you as the leader coaching your people. And I think that that's really helpful to remember, that everybody's going to apply it differently. Just because you said it in a meeting one time doesn't make it possible for everybody that first time. But you learn through doing. And I think having that grace for people is super important. We've got lots of people in the chat talking about the questions of setting people up for success really well. Like, as a leader, I think that's really important questions. Rachel and Christina and all of those people are saying this and agreeing with you. Okay. I just looked at the time, and it's true. Every time I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we still going? Thank you so much for such great wisdom for us today. Will you please tell the people how to find you, how to connect with you? This can help you find Matt's podcast and books if you want to check out his website there, but invite us into your world. Tell us how to keep this conversation going.
Absolutely. Well, I'll give you two areas to reach out. And you mentioned the podcast and the books for that QR code, which is great. So performanceoptimist.com is my website. And on there, you can find all the links to socials and pretty much every other way to get in touch with me, phone number, the whole 9 yards. And also on there is a link to, if you wanted to just book some time, on my calendar, there's a link on there for a 60-minute kind of introductory conversation, if you will. And then the other link that I will give, I think is also in the QR code, but is attractionpros.com, which is the podcast. We recently celebrated 300 episodes and going strong. So we look forward to many, many more.
I love it. Matt is really a delight of a human. And if you are at all interested, please connect with him. He is just as lovely one-on-one as you've experienced with us here today. And so thank you again for your time. I so appreciate it.
Well, I thank you, Jen, and thank you to everybody who's watching and listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody, we're going to take a little break for 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to be on a break. And then the next week is Labor Day. Can you believe that Labor Day is in 2 weeks? And then we will be coming back with the new thing that I have been teasing you about. And you're all like, you've been talking about this. Like, why can't you tell us yet? It's coming. It's coming on September 11th. It's going to be helpful for you as a leader, as somebody who's trying to help yourself grow, other leaders grow, and creating a really positive work environment. So work is a joy and people are whole and your organization flourishes and is profitable, all of those things working together. So it is coming. It's coming. So we will see you on September 11th live at 1 p.m. Eastern. And for now, I would love if you do something that Matt said. I love that, connect with Matt, but I love the reframe about if you're a new leader, you now have to work through people. And if you're an experienced leader, how can you help them set up for success? Just, reach out to us. Tell us how you're doing with that. We both would love to hear. So Matt, thanks again for being here today. We just so grateful for you to spend your time.
It was absolutely my pleasure. Thanks, Jen.
All right. Bye, everybody.